It's the end of 2022, and I thought what better video to make than my end of the year in the bag. Before I get into my discs, I'll show you guys my bag and then a few of the accessories I have to go with it. This year I was using the hand-dye mission rig bag, and I absolutely love this thing. It has so much storage. Sometimes I can fit up to like 35 discs in it, even more sometimes. Usually I only carry about 29 or 30 though. In this side pouch here, I always carry a portable charger with me, because you know you have those long 2-round tournaments and you know you got to keep score somehow, so having that to charge my phone always comes in handy. Over on this side, I've always got my Norse Gods disc golf towel to dry my disc. It's actually a little bit wet right now, I played today. But in the other side pouch, I carry my rangefinder, which I use pretty often. I've got some chapstick, a couple snacks. They always come in handy on the course. And I've got a hanky, because my nose always seems to run during disc golf rounds. And on the other side of my bag, I always carry my water bottle to stay hydrated. This was one of my best disc golf purchases ever. It's a really cheap, like 6-foot pole that I use all the time. It was super cheap, I found it online, but I always have that with me because it fits real nicely into the side pouch here on this mission rig bag. I also carry this little tripod. I actually want it at Dave & Buster's, but it works really well when I want to film a video and I don't want to bring my big tripod out on the course. This works really well for just quickly setting up my phone to take a video. And I've also got my trusty Sharpie, because you never know when someone's going to need a Sharpie to, you know, write their name on their disc, or you get a paper scorecard or something like that, so I always have one handy on me. So now down to the other side pocket I have down here. This pocket actually fits a lot of stuff. I carry my PDGA mini disc with me. This knee pad, I actually won this in a CTP competition at a tournament I played in. I've used this a number of times in tournaments when I have to, you know, straddle out, throwing out of some thick brush. It comes in handy when I need to put my knee down. It makes it a lot more comfortable. And then of course I have my dry sack. This one's pretty old, I've used it a lot, so it's losing a little bit of its powder, but I also have this other sack in here that I haven't broken out yet. It was made by Dry Flight Golf Sacks, and they sponsored a tournament I played in, and from what I've felt with it so far, they work really well, so shout out to them. Now onto my discs. I'll start with my putting putters. Almost all of this season I was putting with these Gateway Warlocks. I really love these, but I've never actually seen anyone else putt with these. I know a lot of people putt with the Wizard, but I prefer the beadless Warlock, which is, it's basically a beadless Wizard. One thing I love about these putters is the plastic. I use the 4S plastic, which is, I think, Gateway's softest plastic. I prefer softer putters, but not discs that are floppy, because you know those, they kind of sometimes stick on your hand, you can't get clean releases, but the 4S plastic for me is a really good balance of soft enough that you're not going to get huge rollaways or things like that, but firm enough that you can still get a really clean release out of the hand. So I've been putting with these basically all season, and I've loved them. Moving on to my throwing putters, I carry a decent number of throwing putters. I'll go from overstable to understable. So start off, I have this 400 plastic A2. This thing is really beefy and it skips a lot, so I use it for a lot of like skip shots, skip approach shots, stuff like that. I have a Toro. I've kind of gone between a Toro and a Zone a lot of the season. Some tournaments I've bagged the Zone, some tournaments I've bagged the Toro, but I think here at the end of the season I've been kind of leaning toward the Toro, because it just goes nowhere basically. Super overstable. I can really crank on it forehand or backhand, and I never have to worry about it turning at all, so I really love this one. Moving on to my pigs. I have a couple pigs. I used to have more, but I lost a few of them. I have a blue one and this orange one. This blue one is still stable, but I can basically throw it flat and it'll go straight for the most part, still with reliable fade at the end. But this orange one, I've had this one the longest out of all these putters, and it is super, super flippy. I can throw it on a really steep hyzer and it'll flip and turn and go all the way over to the right. So they complement each other well, and I love the feel of the pig, so I have both of these in the bag. Moving on, I just got this one. This is a Ledgestone Edition Fierce that I just got a couple weeks ago, and the first time I threw it, I fell in love with it. I can throw it on a little baby hyzer, and it'll just go dead straight for, 300, 325 feet. So all my straight shots under 325 are basically going to be with this disc. And then probably my most understable putter, I have this R2 Neutron Spin. I've had this for quite a while too. It's pretty beat in as well. So I can basically throw this thing on any kind of hyzer I want to, and it's always going to flip up over to the right. Very reliable understability. So I love having that slot filled as well. Moving on to my mid-ranges, I carry 6 mids in my bag, and I'll do the same thing I did with the putters. I'll start with overstable and end with the understable ones. I carry 6 of them. I kind of changed my mids a lot throughout the season, trying to find certain stability slots to be filled, but here at the end of the season, I think I've really got my mids dialed now. I'll start with overstable. Honestly, this might be the most overstable mid I've ever thrown in my life. It's a MVP deflector. It's probably one of, if not the beefiest disc I have thrown. I can throw it backhand or forehand. I've never seen it turn even into the strongest headwind. So that's a cool slot to have in your bag. Almost like a utility disc, but I still throw it a decent amount of the time. And then this is probably my go-to mid-range. It's an Axiom Pyro. It's still very overstable, but not overstable like the deflector. I can basically pump this thing really flat and it'll just hold straight for a while and then fade out pretty reliably at the end, which is a flight that I love. And I have a few other discs I'll talk about later that have those same kind of flight characteristics. So I just love the flight of the Pyro. I got this Discmania MD3, I think for Christmas last year actually. I love this thing for really straight mid-range shots, 350. Anything straight, 350 feet, I'm probably pulling out this MD3. I do have a few more discs that are close in stability to this, but this is just a hint more stable than the next two that I'll show you guys. I have 2 buzzes that I carry with me. I actually just aced with this one the other day with my dad, but they basically fly the same, I would say. So I basically just have this one in here as kind of a backup if I lose this one, because I do throw these a decent amount of the time. These are very straight as well. I can throw them on kind of like a baby hyzer and they'll flip up. If there's a little headwind, they will turn a little bit. If there's a tailwind, they'll just go dead straight. But I love the feel of buzzes. I mean, who doesn't love a good buzz? So I carry 2 of those. And then my most understable mid-range, I carry a Innova Mako 3. I dyed this one. I have a few discs dyed in here, just kind of as a fun little hobby. None of them really come out that great looking. A few do, but not many. But this one is very understable. I love it for like uphill shots and stuff like that. I don't use it a ton, but it's kind of in the utility slot, but I use it here and there. Moving on to my fairway drivers, I carry 7 fairways. I'll start with overstable. Probably one of the most overstable fairway drivers I've thrown is the Castaplast Stall. I am a huge fan of K1 plastic, so this feels really nice in my hand. Cool story about this one, I actually lost it at a course where I play in a league, and I was super bummed that I lost this because I love this disc. And someone actually found it for me and returned it to me, so shout out to them. And while it was kind of in the water where it was lost, a leaf dyed itself on the side here. So that's a little bit of a cool story of someone's kindness, you know, returning a disc to me. So I love this disc. But also in the overstable slot, I have Star Firebird. It's not quite as overstable as the Stall, but still really, really overstable. This thing really doesn't flip at all. I also dyed this one, but you know, sometimes they turn out cool, sometimes they don't. But I just got this Thunderbird a couple weeks ago as well, and I absolutely love it. I threw a Thunderbird really, really early in the season, and then I took that one out of my bag because it was getting a little too beat in. But I just got this one, and I forgot how much I love the Thunderbird mold. It has that very straight flight with the reliable fade at the end that I talked about earlier. So I can pump this thing forehand or backhand really flat, and I can trust it to not turn over on me and fade out pretty reliably. Another disc that flies like that is this Eagle. I've had this disc. This might be the disc I've had in my bag the longest. It's super beat in, but when I got it new, it was so beefy. But now it's kind of that same stability as the Thunderbird, but in a 7-speed, so it doesn't go quite as far. I can just pump this thing straight, forehand or backhand, and I can trust that it's not gonna flip over all the way and have reliable fade at the end. So I love this disc as well. These next two are TL3s. I have this Evelina Salonen Tour Series TL3 that I've been loving, and this Star TL3 that I also dyed. This one is much more stable than my Star TL3. This one is like for hyzer flips. I can even hyzer flip it on forehand. I'm comfortable doing forehand hyzer flips with this one, which I love. But this one really, if you know I have a 400-foot straight shot, this is kind of my go-to. I can pump it flat. It might turn a little bit, but it does have some reliable fade in this halo plastic. So I love these two discs. And then this next disc I also got recently, but this is kind of the definition of a utility disc. It's an ESP Sting. It's really pretty, love the colors on this. But this thing is probably the most understable fairway driver I've ever thrown. It's only -2 flight numbers, so I didn't expect it to be too flippy, but it is crazy understable. So I don't use this a whole lot. It's kind of in the bag just for some pretty looks and maybe a utility shot here and there. And last but not least, my distance drivers. I carry more distance drivers than any other type of disc. I carry 9. 2 of which are kind of utility drivers, and I keep them in this side pocket over here. They're my most understable and most overstable distance driver. I have a Star Corvette. I've had this for quite a while, but this thing is really flippy. This thing I use for rollers, forehand, backhand. I can even put it on a little bit of a hyzer and it'll still turn into a roller most of the time. But even for like really heavy tailwind drives, if I got like a super tailwind, this thing really bombs. So I do keep it in the bag. I use it here and there, but mostly a utility disc. And then this is a Nate Doss TI Force, and this is the most overstable distance driver I think in existence, maybe other than the Tilt, maybe. But I love this thing. I do use it occasionally, even in tournament rounds. You know, it's kind of like a get out of trouble disc. If I need something super crazy overstable to get around things, this is kind of my go-to for those few situations. Moving on to my main drivers, I'll start with overstable. I have a Star Excalibur. This is actually one of my favorite dies I've ever done. It turned out really cool. It's kind of got blue in the middle and then reddish pink on the outside. This is one of the very, very few dies that actually turned out kind of cool looking, so I'm a little proud of this disc. But this thing's pretty beefy, but it still goes pretty far. So it's not like utility overstable like the Force, but I can still get pretty good distance out of this, but have a lot of reliable fade. So headwind drives, this is probably what I'm going to be pulling out. I also bag a Jeremy Koling Tour Series Boss. These things are incredible. I throw this all over the place, forehand and backhand. Not super overstable, but definitely still overstable. I can pump this thing really flat and it's not really going to turn unless I have like a really heavy headwind. Then I see it turn a little bit sometimes, but I love this thing too. Moving on to my destroyers, I carry two Calvin Heimberg Tour Series destroyers. These things have been in my bag for a while and they complement each other really well. This one here with the red stamp is my more overstable one, and this one is my less overstable one. Both of them are honestly neutral to slightly overstable. They're not really as overstable as the Boss or the Excalibur, so I can throw these a little bit straighter and maybe get a little bit more distance out of them, but they complement each other really, really well. Moving on to this Discraft Tour Series Ezra Aderhold Nuke. I've been loving this mold. I actually had a nuke earlier in the season. It was a pink Tour Series nuke. And while I was at USDGC playing in the amateur doubles portion of it, I actually met Ezra and Brody and had both of them sign my Tour Series nuke, which was so cool. But then I couldn't throw it after that. I had to keep it nice. So I went out and asked my brother. He said he wanted to get me a Christmas present, so this is what I asked from him, and he got it for me. I've only had it a little bit, but from what I've seen from it, this is going to be one of my go-to distance drivers, especially for forehand for all of next season, and it's really pretty too. So I've been loving this so far. And then my two understable molds, I carry two Shrikes. This yellow one I've had for a really long time. I actually got it from a used bin at Play It Again Sports. But this thing is pretty flippy, not as flippy as my Corvette. But this thing, well, both of these Shrikes bomb. But this one, if I have a little tailwind, it does stable up a little bit, so I can get a ton of distance in a tailwind with this Shrike. But this red halo Shrike, it's so pretty, and I love the Shrike mold, but it has a little more stability than my Star Shrike, but not quite as much stability as my Nuke. So with those three discs, they're really a great spectrum of stabilities for me to work with and manipulate. So those are my distance drivers. So that's gonna wrap up my 2022 end of season in the bag video. Hopefully next season I'm gonna do another one of these to show you guys how my bag changes throughout next season. I'm hoping to kind of keep my bag the same throughout the majority of the year. I'm a person who loves throwing new discs and seeing the flights of new discs. That's kind of one of my passions. So that kind of leads me to wanting to change out discs all the time out of my bag, but I'm really going to try to keep these discs as my bag throughout the major portion of the season. So thank you guys for watching. I'm actually recording this on New Year's Eve and the ball's about to drop. It's 11 o'clock, so got a little bit of time before the ball drops. So Happy New Year to everyone, and I hope to see you all out on the course. Thanks for watching.